We're bringing you boots on the ground insight from the ranchers, conservationists, and partners who are helping to preserve the best of the Golden State for generations to come. Join the California Rangeland Trust for inspiring stories of resilience, innovation, and hope as we get tuned into the land.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Tune Into the Land. I am your host and CEO of the California Rangeland Trust, Michael Delbar. March is always a special time. It's when we celebrate International Women's Day, National Ag Day, and this year even more so with it being the International Year of the Woman Farmer and the International Year of Rangelands and Pastoralists. So there's a lot to recognize and a lot of great people to celebrate. At the Rangeland Trust, we're fortunate to work with incredible landowners all across California. And many of those landowners are women playing a major role in shaping the future of agriculture and conservation. So for this episode, we wanted to highlight one of them, our 2025 Conservationist of the Year, Karen Sweet, who was honored at our Western Affair alongside her late husband, Darrel. Darrel served as a founding board member of the Rangeland Trust and was also part of our Emeritus Council. The Sweet family has been ranching in the Livermore area for a long time, where ranching and conservation have gone hand in hand for generations. Karen is a longtime rancher and conservation leader, and her story is one of partnership, legacy, and a deep commitment to the land. From working side by side with Darrel managing the ranch to stepping into leadership roles in conservation, she brings a perspective that's both practical and forward-looking. In our conversation, we talk about how ranching in Alameda County has changed over the years, the role women have played and continue to play in the industry, and what led Karen and her family to make the decision to permanently conserve their ranch. We also dive into her work in the broader conservation community, including her involvement with the California Rangeland Conservation Coalition, and what she sees ahead for the next generation. So with that, I'm excited to bring you my conversation with Karen Sweet. It's my honor to welcome Karen Sweet to the podcast. Hello, Karen.
Hi, Michael.
Can you start off telling us a little bit about yourself, you, and then how you met Darrel and a little bit of the history of the ranch?
Well, thank you for asking. So I'm the daughter of a farmer from Kansas, and we moved out here when I was a kid because California needed a lot of teachers. And so I grew up in town with a dad who tried to garden everything he could. So the work ethic of farming was kind of always around me. And being a teacher, he met my future father-in-law. They taught school and were principals together. And so there's a lot of social time. And Darrel and I started dating in high school, and we had known each other a little bit before that, and ended up finishing up our education at Cal Poly together.
So Livermore has been your home for a long, long time.
Most of my life, yeah.
How did you get started in ranching?
While we were at Cal Poly, Darrel had 5 polled Hereford cows and a bull. And so actually those calves kind of put us through school, and we worked together at the Alameda County Fair in the livestock department. And so that was it. And then when we came home from college, we expanded the herd a little bit and shared pasture with his dad up here in the Altamont. Okay.
So when did you acquire the ranch on which you're now on?
So in 1973, our second child, Eric, was born. We were still in town, and we just had this, once in a while, these things just fall in your lap. So a farmer had this property for sale, and it happens to be contiguous to the old between 2 family ranches. One that was established in 1859 by Darrel's great-great-grandmother, and the other established by his great-grandmother on the other side. So we were able to buy land that once was in the family between 2 other family parcels. So it's just kind of the luck of geography and the luck of somebody selling property at the right time. We were able to get a Stockton Land Bank loan. At that time, Darrel was working for Livermore PCA. So we had one income that kind of bought the ranch for a long time.
And it was about that time when Darrel was working for Jack Sparrock?
He started quite a bit later. I don't even remember those years. but he spent quite a bit of time at Livermore PCA and then Stockton Land Bank before he went to work for Jack Sperrick. And that was about 15, 20 years with Jack.
Great. Well, that was, you and Darrel were instrumental in helping Jack conserve the Bar One Ranch in Sierra Valley.
At that time, Darrel left Jack's employee. He was employee of Jack at that time and kind of was the intermediary for Jack to work with the Nature Conservancy and the Sierra Business Council and the other new land trust that was up in Sierra Valley. And Darrel really loved the challenge of helping those other organizations understand ranching. And then when Jack was satisfied, they moved forward and got it done. And then obviously the neighbors, a couple of them also got easements. And so that was a big, pleasurable, challenging, but also interesting project Darrel really enjoyed working with.
Well, that was a project that really got Sierra Valley landowners going on the conservation front.
And my role was to listen to the conversations here in the office that I share with Darrel.
What's the day-to-day operations look like on the ranch now?
I think you knew Gordon Rasmussen. Gordon Rasmussen used to say that ranching in Alameda and Contra Costa County is lazy ranching because we have such a mild climate and good soil, and we don't have the topographic challenges that so many of our friends have. So I won't say it's easy. I don't mean that, but I'm 7 miles from town, and I have commuters on two sides, which is really more challenging than running the cattle. But day-to-day life and this season is just watching the grass is still growing. The cows are full by 9 o'clock and lying down. And we just finished boosting the calves a second time, worrying about how long the grass is going to last, checking water tanks, checking water troughs, and looking for wildflowers. So that's kind of what I've been doing the last several weeks.
And both sons are helping you?
I have one son. He lives on the ranch. He spends a lot of time out of town with his daughter who's playing softball up in Idaho. But yes, Eric is here when we have things to do. Darrel's brother is next door, and he's a great help because he doesn't, right now he's home. And yeah, so we kind of share work together and have a team going.
Oh, great. His ranch, Darrel's brother's ranch is right there as well.
Contiguous.
Great. So this year is the International Year of the Woman Farmer, and it's the International Year of Rangeland and Pastoralists. International Women's Day was March 8th, and National Ag Day is March 24th. So a lot of celebration of the contributions of women in farming and ranching this year, and very due recognition for that. What has been your experience as a woman in ranching in California and the Bay Area? How has this been for you?
Being a woman in ranching has just been a positive experience, provided lots of opportunities. Being affiliated with the Alameda County Resource Conservation District, the Rangeland Conservation Coalition, and just being a rancher, I'm often asked to come to the table and share my perspective about some land use activities or talk about what ranching is. I just went to a local talk about a woman rancher from the 18th century who was a well-known rancher at that time who but, the urban public around me is very curious about ranching in general. And so it doesn't matter who's there to help them understand it. But being a woman hasn't really given me different experiences, I don't think, particularly if I like to go to meetings all the time.
Have you found any challenges or opportunities that are unique that you've encountered?
No, I don't think so. I was just listening to a podcast with my friend from Idaho, a former state cattlewoman friend who was on her legislative Congress in Idaho talking about how, we just do. Women just do. And so when the opportunities come about, we bring our way of doing things. And so the challenges for us I think in my generation I don't know if they're more of a challenge than my mother's generation would have been. But I think, as Lori likely was saying, we've tried our best to make opportunities for other women, younger women. And the younger women are in a different place than we were. I didn't study agriculture. But as I said before, I listen a lot. And especially in the Rangeland Coalition effort, there's a whole range of things that I've been able to kind of grasp and learn just by listening and attending conferences and meetings. But the challenges of being a woman, I don't think are there, because I think the men around me anyway know that I'm the one who shows up at the meetings and will participate in the discussion at the local ag advisory committee, for example. And I think now that I'm the senior person at Sweet Livestock, I'm going to start going to the local cattlemen's meeting and see what happens there.
Well, I've watched you over the years, and you are an extremely valuable resource to folks in all these meetings. And I know you go to a lot of them, and I think that your participation and input have been so important to all of those. Growing up in Alameda County, I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes. It's a very urban county on one hand, but then still very rural in other areas. And ranching dates back in Alameda County to the Spanish land grant era. Yeah. So what landscape changes have you seen in Alameda County?
Well, obviously the urbanization has been an issue, and the leapfrogging that used to happen until the citizens took land, put a urban growth boundary around that for all the cities in the county. But the biggest land change has been public land ownership and acquisition. And in the early days, in the 60s, 70s, even into the 80s, that meant that when a park district or a city bought land, they took out the ponds, they took out the fences, they put their own employees in the housing, and the rancher who willingly would have sold either was retiring or found something else to do. But with land conservation opportunities such as what CRT provides, the Tri-Valley Conservancy has been providing also in the Valley floor, and with all of the outreach that all of us collectively have been doing about the values of rangeland, I think the public has gained a true understanding of the values of rangelands. And so those of us who are here are respected. Well, whether or not everybody shows up someplace, the point is that they like the hills like they are. They want the parks well groomed and managed, and they've learned how to stay away from between a cow and a calf in the parks. So I think that we right now have a good arrangement of living together. One of the exercises Darrel and I would often do as a new acquisition would happen, we'd hold up our hands and again try to count how many ranches around the rim of Livermore Valley were still in private ownership. And the count is getting less and less. And in a way, that's disturbing. On the other hand, as long as they're grazed and they're taken care of, the landowner who sold them made a decision. Nothing has been by no forced acquisition. So the ranchers who are here, who still own their ranches, are here because they want to be here. They have roots. They have jobs to pay for their ranching activities on weekends. And in the early days of the 70s, a lot of people did take money and sell and move to other states. But those of us who are here to stay. And, we kind of surround our community with, or the center of our ranching community is kind of the rodeo, social and public life. There's 3 rodeos in Alameda County, maybe 4 with 2 juniors. And so our ranching community is very close. And we are there to help one another as needed, obviously. And so I think I think the respect with our outreach into the community has been valuable as well.
I know that the public lands that have been acquired in Alameda County do have active grazing, most of them, if not all.
Yes.
And
yes.
that's so important. But it's also something I think is, I don't want to say unique to Alameda County, but I think the county has embraced it probably more so than other areas, and which is a great thing, because I'm knowing some of the folks that are managing those livestock out there. It's that interface between the public and the rancher and the livestock. And once in a while, there's some folks probably wonder, what's this cow doing out here? But I think for the most part, they exist well together.
Yeah. Well, and as Lynn Hunzinger tries to tell people when people ask her, so where are the cows? She says, well, when you go down the freeway, just look. You'll see green grass and healthy rangelands. They're under the trees, or they're eating their cud, and they're there, taking care, doing their job.
Rangeland Trust in Alameda County alone has 6 conservation easements, about 1,300 acres. We've seen more and more interest in conserving these private working lands in Alameda County, and in the last probably 10, 12 years.
Yes.
Why do you think that is?
My generation is still in the land. I mean, but we've got young people coming along who want to stay in ranching. So Clayton Copeman, for example, and Carrie have been going up on the ranch. The ranch is protected. They're scrambling trying to find pasture, and that pasture they might be leasing may or may not have a long-term opportunity for them. So that when they have an opportunity to work with a conserved ranch, it gives them stability. But I also think that knowing how scarce our private lands are in the county, and the leadership of Tim and Darrel and the Walker family, those 3 families have kind of broke ground. And so the other great opportunity for us is that we have the Altamont Open Space Committee, that didn't say it that right correctly, which is a self-funded agency commission of the county and cities whose goal is to preserve land for habitat and biodiversity, and they understand ranching finally. That was one of the things that we worked so hard to do. And so we sort of have an opportunity for opening up the conservation easement funding source for our own ranches here in the county. And so I'm hoping when the next easement goes through that we'll kind of flood them with more requests, because they've got like $25 million in the reserve for acquiring land.
And we're working on some of those projects, as you know. Darrel was one of Rangeland Trust founding board members, and then turned out and went on to our Emeritus Council. And both of you have been longtime supporters of the work that the organization does. What is it about the mission of the Rangeland Trust that resonates with you the most?
The mission and the activities and the legacy of CRT was in our hearts. We both came from agricultural families. And Darrel was the person who knew all the family stories. We're living on legacy land. And it's just who we are, that helping other ranchers be able to do the same is important. And it's also it's a people thing as well as a land thing, that the families are able to sustain themselves, but also leave a legacy and be content to do what they like doing best, which is ranching and taking care of their landscape. It's one of those things where it's just a no-brainer, I guess, that I hadn't really put into words before. It's just kind of like, duh, that's what we do.
I love how you put that. It's a people thing and a land thing.
Yeah.
So you put the Sweet Ranch under a conservation easement with the Rangeland Trust. What led to that decision? That's a big step.
Well, it might be in terms of activity and dollars and decisions that had to be made along the way, since it was a mitigation easement. But it was a no-brainer to move forward after helping lots of other people make it happen and wanting to seek something for ourselves. We had already started to make an application to this Altamont Open Space Committee when the mitigation opportunity came. And Darrel also saw that project as another challenge to help educate the consultants who were kind of working in the middle. And so it was an enjoyable experience for him. And we were just excited for all the opportunities it's going to bring to our own kids and grandkids. Eric's living on the ranch while Melanie's in Colorado. She loves the ranch. And we find all the opportunities we can for her son to come and enjoy it and learn to horseback ride and work hard with helping me with weeding and that kind of thing too. But the big step for us was not to do it, but how long is it going to take to work out all these details with the consultants and the attorneys?
It took some time, but I remember being on those calls with Darrel and those biologists, and he really did do a great job at explaining things and explaining reality of some of the issues.
Well, I think when CRT was formed, he and Steve Sinton, I think, were the two, maybe McDonald. The calls that I would hear them talking for hours about the details of what a CRT easement would look like that a rancher would be willing to put up with. Of course, at that time we weren't talking mitigation at all, but just kind of trying to make things not just reasonable, but understandable and obvious to everyone's attorney and family down the road was an activity that really was challenging, but also enjoyable.
So, Karen, the efforts for promoting conservation that you and Darrel have put in over time, that's one of the many reasons why at our Western Affair last year, we awarded the Conservationist of the Year to you two. What does that award represent for you?
The opportunity to be honored by your peers that you worked side by side with is an ultimate pleasure and honor.
Well, it was ours to award it to you both because it's definitely well reserved.
Thank you very much.
And then you, this year at the Society of Rangeland Management, were awarded the Chuck Arecki Award. Can you tell us a little bit about what that award is and what does that mean to you?
Well, again, the application for this award was sort of done behind my back by two of my conservation mentors. And so I really didn't apply for it. And so I said, oh, well, it'll be interesting to see who gets this. But after the award was presented, I called Chuck. He's 90 years old, lives in retirement in Montana, and has always been involved with conservation where he was. And he always wanted ranchers to be more participatory in SRM and conservation activities and meetings. And he's been a philanthropist, providing scholarships for ranching kids in Montana. A very kind of an interesting guy. So this award, he said, he designed to be an incentive for ranchers to participate in SRM. And so it was especially an honor to know why he wanted to do it, because I had just recently joined the board of directors for CalPAC section of SRM with the goal to encourage ranchers to become members. So again, it was very delightful. And only it had been awarded 2 other times, and I happen to know the other 2 people. So it just feels good. And I'm going to figure out how to fulfill Chuck's wish to get more members participating.
Well, you are very successful at carrying on that conservation leadership in everything you do. I have no doubt that you'll be able to get the SRM membership up because you've taken leadership roles, as you talked about. You're a board member with the Alameda County Resource Conservation District. I know you're very active in Alameda County Cattlewomen. How important is it to be involved in these types of organizations?
Well, I think it's tremendously important. My frustration is that in a county like ours with a dwindling number of ranchers and farmers, that it's hard to get them to meetings. Why would I go join the Ag Advisory Committee? Or what is the Conservation District anyway? And so the challenge is that everybody's busy. And especially, as I mentioned earlier, the rodeo community is especially busy. They've got their own meetings and activities and fundraisers. So I just wish there were more of us to go around. But it's at the table where we can be influential, where we can learn something. The Ag Advisory Committee, for example, does kind of influence policy, not as much as we would like, but the Rangeland Conservation Coalition is sort of like that, where if you don't come together with people you don't know, you miss opportunities and learning along the way. But we can influence, we can be influenced, we can certainly make a difference, but it's collaboration is where we're going to sustain ourselves as a smaller and smaller industry along the way. And besides, leadership is going to meetings is fun, and the friendships that we develop in those other organizations are worth it.
Absolutely. You mentioned the California Rangeland Conservation Coalition. That coalition brings together ranchers, scientists, conservation groups, agencies, staff, all with the goal of protecting California rangelands.
Yes.
Can you tell us how and why the organization was started?
It's a fun story. So both Darrel and Tim Copeman and Bill Thomas from California Cattlemen Association had gotten acquainted with Steve Thompson, who was then in 2005 and 6 was Southwestern Region Director for Fish and Wildlife Service. He told us that he was tired of the ranchers complaining to him about things, and he was tired of the environmentalists telling him things. And he finally said, you know what, you guys have in common are rangelands and ranching. So I wish you guys would get together. So we got ourselves together with some statewide organizations at the Copeman Ranch in Sunol. And he took us on a tour, and so in a car is an environmentalist who we didn't know, and a rancher, and an agency person touring Copeman Ranch. Melinda and her friends barbecued lunch for us, and we sat around. And by the end of the meeting and discussion, we resolved two things. The idea was that we thought we were not going to agree on anything, but instead we agreed on about 90% of the things that came up during that discussion. And we agreed that we would write a resolution that states what it is we all agree about for healthy rangelands and the role of ranching and how important the biodiversity is. And secondly, we decided probably we better have an open summit the next year if we get this resolution done. So several of us wrote the resolution in record time. Tracy Shore and the woman from Fish and Wildlife Service and Noelle Kremer and I kind of came up with the rangeland resolution that's only been revised once to clarify our interest in public rangelands as well. And we had the first summit a year later and have great friends. And it's during a time in 2006 is what I call the grazing wars, just to simplify the fact that all these organizations didn't know whether they liked cattle grazing or not. So in the course of about 5 years, I think on all the work that all of us individually and collectively did at the summit, bringing science to the table, bringing good experiences, and ranchers and environmentalists sharing the podium during the course of the day, that gradually, I think we had an influence on reducing the grazing war into a when cow, where cow, not whether to have a cow. And so I think that agreement of 90% has made a huge difference.
What were some of the key focus areas that the group talked about? Do you recall? Like wildlife habitat or soil health?
Soil health. Soil health wasn't really a conservation priority talked about like it is now, but the wildlife at that time really was severe, and the forbs and the native grasses that people thought we should go back to, but also trying to figure out how in the world cattle grazing fits in. And the need for, we kind of identified some science that was needed to justify and explain how it all fits together. And that with successful ranching was going to definitely be part of our future in California to sustain the conservation values.
So it's been 20 years since that resolution was drafted and folks signed on to it, and the coalition has been in existence. How do you think the coalition's evolved in these 20 years?
What I'm most proud about, Michael, is because the coalition has not been a conservation project organization, but a lot of our signatories and others, which are people who agree with our Rangeland resolution, have gone on to do their thing. So whether it's a land trust or it's an organization that likes to restore land or do projects or count birds or whatever, everybody has taken their responsibility and worked pretty much independently. So the role of the coalition has mainly been to share education, share successes, share opportunities to learn more, and then the annual summit where we bring people back together and share some of that new science, brag about one another, and meet new friends, and realize that this is an important thing to be collegial. And I think the collegiality is something I'm especially proud of.
Do you recall how many signatories there are to the resolution?
There's over 100. And after 25, we quit soliciting. I mean, there were some at the beginning that we knew were important in agencies and major conservation organizations. But after that, organizations came to us, and all they had to do was send us a letter and say, we like the Rangeland resolution, and we would like our name placed on the list, which I need to update from time to time, because we're doing it and we believe in it. And that statewide energy for rangeland working landscapes has really been pretty amazing, because I get to see their Facebook activities, and there's trails, there's trail days, there's trail cleanup days, there's public tours out on the conserved ranches, there's ranchers hosting things, as well as whatever happens in the political arena that all the organizations do. So there's a tremendous amount of activity that celebrates and sustains and works to enhance our California rangelands.
Having over 100 diverse signatories to that resolution is extremely telling. It tells folks how important the work is, how important the grazing is to not only the cultures and the environment and the health of our landscapes, but as you mentioned, Karen, it brings folks together, folks that would normally not be in the same room necessarily.
Yeah.
I know that when we used to go back as coalition representatives to Washington and lobbying for different policy issues, whether it's Farm Bill or others, we walk into a member's office and you've got somebody in there from environmental organizations, livestock organizations, conservation organizations, and that member looks and says, wait a minute, you're all here on the same side of this issue. You're all asking for the same thing. That's a no-brainer. It made their job easy.
Yeah.
But it was testament to the power of a coalition like that.
I think the first tour we did as a group, and I'm going to be sharing a picture of it at the summit, was the group of us having lunch at the cafeteria at Defenders of Wildlife in Washington, D.C. And there were too many of us, so we kind of hid the big bronze wolf that's out in front. But we had Kevin Kester, Tim Koutman, Kim Delfino. I think Tracy was there, Bruce Hoffenfeld, and of course, Darrel and me and TNC. And then we go out into the Capitol with various appointments. And that's really quite a photograph.
Yeah. So you mentioned the summit, and the summit's coming up pretty soon here. Can you tell us more about what the Coalition Summit is?
So the summit is a one-day event in Stockton, in the middle of the state, where we bring those signatories and whoever else would like to come together. The academics, Cal Poly usually brings some students, agency people, if we could get on their calendar, ranchers. And as I understand, we're one of the few conferences that assigns seating. So we make sure that that the diversity of participants is spread around a table. I've even split up couples and said, no, you have to, one to do to this table, one to that table, because we want you to get acquainted with other people. And so we bring people together and with food prepared by cattle women. So we bring in that ranching hospitality element, and we kind of have some presentations and some dialogue. This year, we're going to have dialogue to celebrate our 20th anniversary. And then hopefully people are exchanging business cards and bragging to one another during the upcoming year. So our goal this year is to just kind of celebrate and kind of re-energize ourselves and to kind of stimulate people to work together some more.
In the past, some of the summits have had a definitive theme. Is there a theme for this year's summit?
Yes, this one is Rangelands, Relationships, and Open Dialogue. So we're going to have group discussions led by Dan Macon and Sheila Berry. And we're going to end it with more of a mixer, so people who don't have to rush home can stay a little bit and visit more with the booth people and Rangeland Trust folks who are there. And so we appreciate being a co-sponsor with Rangeland Trust.
Well, we're very proud and happy to do so. It's an extremely important event, and it's always been a great success. And a lot of that due to the efforts that you put into it. So once again, Karen, thank you for everything you do for the coalition.
Of course, and I love how you all help me.
So just kind of wrapping things up, what's your perspective on the future of ranching, Alameda County, California, the country? What's that look like to you?
Whether I would put an adjective to it, I don't know that I'm going to say rosy necessarily, because there's always going to be challenges. But as I've been around the younger people coming along and all of the research that Rangeland Trust and the universities have done to verify and strengthen the understanding of working rangelands, we're going to be here. We have a lot of work to do. The public loves to eat meat. They like the flowers and the hillsides that surround them. I think they're learning that ranching is necessary. Ranchers love what they do. The public landowners also need ranching on that property, whether it's a park or a forest. But I think that there's some changes I'm kind of excited about. One is I think the younger generations, now plural I can say, are more entrepreneurial. They're finding new ways of doing things. They're bringing in new technology. They're bringing in new marketing, new diversification. And that's on top of their day jobs in most cases. But we'll still have challenges, like as we all have over time. But right now, I think the price of diesel fuel is going to be a challenge for a while, because what I call the commuting rancher who leases multiple pieces of land with or without their own home base is transporting cattle. And then they're going to check on them. So the price of fuel is going to be a real challenge for them right now. And then, of course, there's always going to be some legal and rural challenges and so on. But there'll be more and more what I call development leftovers around California. And that's where the city will allow a development and they put up their wall, but they've already taken half the ranch away and the place where the headquarters were. So there's this little development area where there's no infrastructure, but it's got grass and it's a fire danger. So So those of us who are entrepreneurial, we take in our water tank and trough and use the fence and try to get a spigot across the wall from the city so that we have our role with fire management in development leftovers. We did that for a while, and it can be interesting, but when the local neighbors say, hey, there's a lot of thatch out there, what are you going to do about it? Then they call a rancher and we figure out how to work together. But I've heard people recently talking about the problems like the access to labor to do the work we need when there's fewer of us available. And even the young people work at night in real jobs. And so helping us after work isn't necessarily available. And I think what happens with the export markets and sustaining that is going to be what we'll be needing if the herd ever grows again. And I think indeed it will at some point. But I think the technology that's available to us now on the ranches in marketing is exciting. And I'm anxious to see whether it's the collared cattle or the drone technology to make sure I know if there's water in my water tank. We're all going to have to get used to and learn how to adapt to it. So I think there's lots of opportunities. We've demonstrated our value, and we're making opportunities for ourselves along the way. But we've got to be at the table to make sure that continues in the way that is our way, not the wrong way.
Well, you've described why these working landscapes are so important and why protecting them and conserving them is so important to not only to the food and fiber production, but fire fuel management, the open space, the wildlife habitat, all those benefits, all are so critical to all of our lives, whether you're the producer, whether you're the resident in the neighborhood, all of that is critical to all of us.
Yes.
Any opportunities for conservation partnerships that we haven't already discussed that you see out there?
Oh, well, there's always another neighbor, another organization that we haven't called or made an effort to communicate with. Every rural community is different. And I know that there's some challenges with relationships along the way and misunderstanding. So I guess I would say, yes, don't ever stop looking for new relationships.
Well, Karen, that's something you're extremely good at and have been so important to the success of the Conservation Coalition, to helping to helping ranchers take that conservation leap. You've led by example. You and Darrel have been tremendous supporters and movers and shakers in this industry. And we thank you tremendously for that. It's been so important and so vital.
Well, thank you, Michael. It's been our pleasure. It's what we do.
Well, thank you for sharing some of your busy day with us today. And we really appreciate that. And
I will see you April 9th in Stockton at the Rangelands Summit. And then there's a tour the next day at the Stone Lakes Preserve right on Highway 5, hosted by Pat Kirby.
Wonderful. Karen, thank you so much.
Thank you.
We hope that you enjoyed this episode with Karen. If you are interested in attending the California Rangeland Conservation Coalition's Rangeland Summit on April 9th, visit carangeland.org. We hope to see you there. That closes the gate on another episode of Season 5 of Tune Into the Land. As we continue into the season, we want to remind you that your feedback matters. So please share your thoughts by leaving a comment or a review, and let us know what you enjoyed, what topics you'd like us to dig into, and your suggestions for future guests. Don't forget to hit that follow button to ensure you're notified when the new episodes drop. And if you'd like to support our mission, visit our website at rangelandtrust.org. There you can make a donation or check out the Get Involved tab to learn more about upcoming events and conservation projects. Thank you for listening, and until next time.